Yeah, well, the way I'm approaching this is drugs that are easy to manage.
Yeah.
Or drugs that have low negative impacts.
I mean, really, you could use anything, but realistically, if somebody wanted to came to me and they're like, hey, I run 150 tests per week. If we simply went to 300 tests, 300 mast, I guarantee you're going to have a heck of a time. We can run a cycle like that for 12 weeks and you can continue to look better and better, through June, July, August. You guys are the best. Like two brothers who argue, but still have each other's back and love each other. Dave,
whoa.
Do you love me, Dave?
Whoa,
do you love me, Dave? What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally, and all of our programming is brought to you by you, the people of Patreon. Thank you very much for your support. I think we have a couple Patreon questions today. There's your famous yawn, everybody. You were waiting for it. We're brought to you by Strom Sports Nutrition. Go to stromsports.com and you can get some great health stacks, especially if you're in cycle and you're in the UK, then you're going to need to check out Strom. And if you're in the UK, you can get your lab work done by Dave. Go to evalbloodanalysis.com. Definitely, if you're on cycle or not, you need to see what your labs are, and Dave can help you with that because the NHS, from what I understand, doesn't really do a lot for you guys. So also check out supplementsource.ca for Canadians. They have great deals that do change from week to week, so keep checking back with them. And of course, truenutrition.com. I get all my protein powder, my creatine, and my collagen from them every month, and I pay for it just like you guys. I use the code THINK, to get a discount, and of course that helps to support our programming. Dave, we got a bunch of stuff. We had a lot of comments last week. We'll talk about those. I know you've got a shout out. We're going to get back into cars. So we're talking, this is when we talk drugs and stuff. This is more like the gear of our other show, Blood, Sweat, and Gear, but a different kind of gear. So we've got some gearheads that want to tune in and hear you talk about souping up your truck. And I know you got some shout outs too. We're going to actually look at a website at the end from these guys here in Michigan that are doing some cool stuff with cars. But we have a lead topic. Of course, we have your listener questions. Comment with new questions. We'll get to them next time. The lead topic, though, is last week we did the worst steroids for average gym bros. And we talked about all the things you wouldn't want to take and why. We talked a little bit about what would be a great cycle for your average gym bro and what good compounds would be, but we didn't get into it deeply. So today, the best cycles for average gym bros. Hollywood Dave over here. For you guys who are not on video, audio listeners, Dave has got sunglasses with him today.
Yes, and explain why, Scott.
Because you think you're that cool, right?
No, because I broke my glasses, and these are I have these that are prescription, which means I can see shit.
Yeah.
And then I have a overpowered pair that I use for drawing, which then that close vision of Scott's face is just not, I'm not ready for that.
Listen, how good can you see right now without your glasses?
You're blurry.
Okay, how many fingers am I holding up?
I can see that, you friggin'
Okay,
turd.
I'm just testing you. How about now?
That many.
You're right, too. That's good. Very good, Dave.
It's the messages, the chat I struggle with.
Okay. So, all right, man. Last week we talked about why you wouldn't want to take certain compounds as an average gym bro that wasn't doing a competition, because competition is all about trying to look a certain way for 1 hour of one day. It's really just an illusion, really, versus what we're trying to do for non-competitors is create a look and maintain that look, be able to hold that long term. Like, hey, I want to get in great shape for the summer and look ripped. That's not just one day. That's like, hey, we're going to try to ride this out for 12 weeks, or the opposite, trying to gain as much muscle as possible, which I think there's less variation between between competitors and non-competitors in the off season. You know what I mean? Because we can all do the same things to grow.
Yeah, but if you're looking at stuff on the milder side, so people are looking at probably a more health to reward balance that's a little bit more health tipped, then I would say test, because it is just so well tolerated in general.
Yeah.
Mast.
I'd take it a step further and say mast E.
Yeah, I'd stay away from fast actors. Unless there's a genuine need to have it that sort of level of finite control, I'd stay away from fast actors and go long esters.
Yeah.
So test E or C, mast E. And then the only thing I'd consider as a fast acting, if you were sort of looking for more size, would probably be MPP.
No long acting Deca?
If you're talking the health reward ratio aspect, I think I'd stay away from Deca.
You'd favor NPP over Deca?
Just for the short exposure term, yeah. So if I was looking at somebody who was a bodybuilder and wanted to gain serious size, then I would be all over testing Deca. You know I love it. You know I'm a big fan of it. But there's no denying, and it seems to be a more prevalent problem these days, that there's more and more people struggling to cope with Deca.
Yeah.
From a mental aspect. I've never had an issue in that sense, but it seems to be something that's coming up more and more common. So if I was looking for a low impacting from a health aspect, so a low risk cycle for someone off season who trains because he enjoys it, wants to put a bit more size on, wants to look a bit bigger for the beach, then I'd probably base it around test mast with MPP, but I wouldn't even do MPP for the full cycle. I'd do it for a section of the cycle.
Okay.
That way, if there are any issues around mood, depression coming in, it's quick out. There's no hassle, easy to get rid of. It does generally seem to be better tolerated than Deca for people that are a little bit sensitive at wine. I think that's just because total plasma levels are going to be slightly on the lower side with MPP.
Okay, so I could see what you're saying. I mean, just to reiterate what we said last week too, it's not as if we're saying that you can't use anything that you wanted to use, but it's a matter of there are, I think, a lot of people who are just looking to get something a little bit extra. They're not looking to do like, hey, I'm not trying to become, the next Nick Walker. I just, want to try to gain a little bit more extra muscle. I'm on TRT. Want to do something a little bit more than that, but also like I don't want to sacrifice my health. So I think, and I can see where you're coming from, how NPP wouldn't be quite as big of a commitment as getting into Deca. Let me ask you this. Let's take a guy on TRT. What about orals? What about, say, maybe just 8 weeks of adding in some Anavar at a low dose?
Well, the way I'm approaching this is drugs that are easy to manage.
Yeah.
Or drugs that have low negative impacts. And there'll be lots of people going, oh, what about Primo? You know my thoughts on Primo. But also, Primo is actually not that simple to manage because of the HDL adulteration. It does actually make things a little bit more complex. And also, because it is such an effective AI, it can actually drive estrogen too low. So it's not a harsh compound, but its management is actually a little bit more complex than people sort of realise. I personally feel anyway. From an oral point of view, though D-bol is tried and tested, it does present a high level of estrogen management. Okay, if you're only going to be running 10 milligrams, you might not have such an issue, but if you're going to start getting sort of 30 milligrams or above, then we're going to see some estrogen management complexity there. So that might not be for everyone.
Yeah.
Anavar is a good choice. T-bol is a good choice. Winstrol as well, though there is obviously the potential joints in sort of older people. So I'd probably stay away from Winstrol for older gentlemen. But I think if you're below 40, you'll probably tolerate it quite well.
I'd go, I'll tell you what, I would think, here's my thought process on it. I would think, okay, Winstrol does have a specific look, but if we could use mast instead, and you know what I mean, get a hardening DHT effect from that, I would personally want to opt for that for the health purposes, for health reasons. It's not going to be as stressful on the liver. It's not going to be quite as hard on your cholesterol,
But yeah, I think Anavar, T-bol are two very good choices if you're talking about an oral addition to a TRT. Very good choices.
You could use those to either grow or to cut, really.
Yeah. And they've got a nice performance boost as well, particularly with T-ball. You know, if you're an athletic individual or you're looking more for a performance sort of approach where you want to improve a sport performance, then T-ball is a very good choice there as well.
Yeah. One thing that we didn't mention last week on our topic of like the worst, steroids for gym bros was insulin. And somebody brought up, well, what about managing insulin as a non-competitor? I don't have a problem using it with a non-competitor if they're interested in it. But, I generally use insulin in a really controlled, specific fashion, but I wouldn't have a problem putting it in with a non-competitor. My caveat to that is that you would really just want to know what you're doing. I would consider it to be somewhat of an advanced compound of understanding how half-lives work and stuff,
I think the other thing with insulin is you're only going to get something out of it if you are really more on point with diet and training and everything else, etc.
Yeah.
I think for the average person, insulin increases or insulin additions not really going to yield much for them.
You're right.
Maybe help with somebody who's struggling with appetite and that side of things potentially. But also, if you're going to use it regularly, you need to be super consistent with your calorie intake as well. So there's all those things to consider. So it's not something that I think is off bounds from a risk element. I think it's more a case of you've got to be on point to get anything from it. So it's maybe not going to be as beneficial as people think. The days of, insulin is the most anabolic compound you can use, and I signed up to that in the early days as well. High dosing and everything else. We've discussed this in the past. It does have a dramatic effect on the look, but it's not something that's sustainable. So I think if you're looking at cycles that are easy to manage, uncomplex, and will work around somebody who, oh no, I'm not training today because I've got to work late, or I've missed a meal so I've grabbed a burger.
Yeah.
Then I wouldn't be looking at insulin in that sort of scenario of a person.
I'd agree with you. And it's not because, once again, it's not like, well, you don't deserve to use it.
Yeah, it's not gatekeeping. You're just not going to get anything out of it.
Yeah, and it might actually be a negative if your diet isn't nailed right. I mean, because you can get fat using insulin as well. So, there is that.
I agree, and obviously the insulin resistance side of things becomes more significant if somebody's already got a poor diet control.
Yeah. Most average gym bros could stand to get leaner than they do. The one thing about competition is competition forces you, it's an outside catalyst that forces you to step your game up. And in general, people are going to take their physique further and get leaner if they are competing than they would otherwise. Versus if you're, just going to the gym more casually and maybe you aren't as 100% committed, then I could definitely see insulin as not being a huge benefit. If anything, improving your insulin sensitivity would be, getting leaner would be getting more out of your own natural insulin and running some gear with that. I would say a real basic type low what's the word that we're looking for? Low commitment cycle would be, like you said initially, just increasing the test. You take it, because we have a lot of guys who are like, I'm on TRT, what should I do with this? If you're taking 150 tests, and I'll say it this way, Dave, that testosterone is a hormone that exists in our body, and it's also a drug. If we take extra vitamin C, we just pee that vitamin C out. We don't utilize 10 times the amount of vitamin C that our bodies can handle. But with testosterone, on the other hand, it'll just keep building and building, and you will get a stronger effect. So your TRT is doing one thing, but when we push you into that supraphysiological range, with your levels, let's say you went to 300 or 400, even 500 test, it's going to be a completely different animal than what your doctor has prescribed.
It is, yes. I also, one drug that we haven't touched on, and I actually think works quite well in this conversation, is EQ.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of EQ, but though it does cause blood thickening, it's easy to manage. It's not a complex management process. It's not anything you really need to balance. Blood gets thick, donate blood, job done. It's so simple that it's not. You're not having to try and balance estrogen levels or try and balance prolactin levels. It's thick. Get rid of some. That's it.
Yeah. Have you heard of EQ becoming more popular in the UK as of late?
Not particularly, though I've actually given it to a few people. Not given it. In cycle plans.
Oh.
In cycle plans before you start. I can't find my spory spout. Where's my pory spout? There's my pory spout.
What the heck are you doing there, Dave? What is that?
Green tea. Green tea.
You're drinking green tea. It looks very thin.
Freshly brewed, mate. That's it hanging in the metal thing in the bottom.
Oh, okay. Is that made with Yorkshire water?
That's made with Yorkshire water with Japanese green tea.
All right, I'm trying to think what else we haven't covered here. I think though the main take-home point is that what is maintainable, what is not the biggest commitment, and what can you get the most out of. I mean, really, you could use anything, but realistically, if somebody wanted to came to me and they're like, hey, I run 150 tests per week. If we simply went to 300 tests, 300 mast, I guarantee you're going to have a heck of a time, especially with the right diet, getting into shape. And let's say that you start that cycle now in the middle of May, we can run a cycle like that for 12 weeks and you can continue to look better and better, through June, July, August.
No, I agree. I would like to make a request, though, of those that are less experienced with anabolics, please.
What's that?
Please learn milligrams.
Yes, there is that. What do you mean by this?
I mean, drugs are dosed in milligrams, not milliliters.
Yeah.
There is nothing more frustrating than having a conversation with someone about their drug usage when they talk in mils constantly, and it's like, it doesn't actually mean anything.
Yeah.
Learn to speak in milligrams. It will be better for you in the long run.
Yeah, it's a thing. There was, and I guess that sums it up. We talked about orals. We talked about different compounds that you could use, and really you could use any of them, but I do think the ones we mentioned, and listen, I'll put Primo in this group. I know you're not a fan of Primo. I think part of that is the overuse of Primo lately, but hey, I think you can have a great cycle with it. But as you mentioned, estrogen management, you got to pay attention, and whether you're a competitor or not, I want to know where your estrogen is sitting after the gear builds up. You know what I mean? Do we have to manage this in any way? Is it too low? Is it too high? I want to be able to always have that in a place that's going to be as healthy as possible for you,
I think one of the things I have against Primo is not the drug. It's the fact that it's regarded as this safe drug that doesn't need any consideration.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. There are some considerations to be needed, and actually it's not a dangerous drug. We're not talking a drug that has potential that trend does.
Yeah.
Not in the slightest. But there is some management that can create some problems if you're not aware of it, which is much less likely to occur with the other compounds that we've discussed.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's always the case. That's my fear too, that when things get swung so far into one direction. I mean, because people used to look at AIs the same way, right? People used to look at Arimidex as, well, you just take a bunch of Arimidex, and they didn't factor that in as being, any relevance to your health. It was just like what you just did. You just, no big deal. It's cheap. You take it. I think that there's an element of that happening now with some of the mitochondrial enhancers. People are across the board like, oh, I want to enhance mitochondria. I didn't know I needed to, but yeah, now that I know, I want to do that. And I'm a big fan of that stuff. Of course, SLU has been a game changer for me. But there is, how would you put it, Dave? There's like waste product from the work that mitochondria does. Like mitochondria generates energy, and as a result, there's reactive oxygen species, and that's basically like free radicals. We have
I'm not good with the big words, so if you're struggling with them, I'm definitely struggling with them. So I'm not even going to attempt to jump in.
Yeah.
Look, I've always run by a caveat when it comes to anabolics. All performance and image enhancing drugs, and it's maybe a little bit basic, but it served me well. I've not always listened to it. In fact, sometimes I've downright ignored it. But I was once taught, actually in America, many, many moons ago, in an economics lesson, that there are no 3 school meals.
Yeah.
Everything in life has a price. And I believe this is very true of anabolics, and it needs to take particular consideration when you're discussing stuff like research chems and developmental drugs.
Yeah.
So there's always a price. Sometimes that price is fair, sometimes it is not, and so I would always be wary if you don't know the cost. I'd always be cautious around drugs that you don't know the negative cost that they're going to imply, because there always will be that to some degree.
Yeah.
And so that's the only thing that I've been wary of. So, when it comes to new development compounds, I am always probably overcautious. And I think I'm probably overcautious more because I'm advising other people on what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And so I feel a heightened responsibility that if I mess it up, it doesn't matter if I mess me up, I live with the consequences. But yeah, it's, there's a load of stuff come out about the GLP-1s and such, and a lot of it, to be fair, is misuse of the compound rather than the compound itself.
Sure.
But the pancreatitis type stuff and the pancreatic problems, they are not really designed around misuse. They are, but it does only affect about 1 to 2% of users. But so there are some genuine issues around some of this drug use that we freehold quite readily at the moment as being safe to use.
Agreed. Guys, I got to take a break to do the whole like, share, subscribe thing, but I also want to say thank you to you. The internet's kind of a weird place, in case you didn't know, and I'm glad that we've put the community together that we have. I'm grateful to read your comments. In fact, I know a lot of YouTubers that don't read comments. I read all of them, and I try to get back to everybody. So if you comment, I will see it, and I'll try to get back to you. Also, the like button is absolutely free of charge. You don't have to pay anything to hit it, and it does help us out a ton. It's not going to push us into your algorithm, but it will help other people to hopefully find the show. So if you like our stuff, please try to help us out. All right, listen, we have a bunch of listener questions. We had some comments too in the live stream. Carnivore Muscle is with us. He said, "Hey guys, I just became an uncle."
Congrats.
How about that? Congrats to him. Now he's like Uncle Dave. How about that?
What? Blind?
Yeah. We did have a bunch of listener questions. You guys are welcome to comment with questions, and we will do our best to get them on the next show. All right, I'm going to start from the top here. Love the show, guys. You guys are the best. Like two brothers who argue, but still have each other's back and love each other. Dave, do you
whoa,
do you love me, Dave?
Whoa,
do you
come
love me, Dave?
The other L word might be acceptable, but love. Two. Whoa.
Scott, could you please ask Dave how much is too much when it comes to importing gear into the UK? Like, what's the limit on orals or injectables before you're in trouble? Also, since he's making a court appearance, I'd hope that he was more organized there than he is on the show with his advice. Oh,
no, not usually.
Oh,
not usually. I've turned up with the wrong report and all sorts of shit before now.
That'd be a nightmare.
Yes, so I actually tried to get rid of that job I've got to do because it's not really worth doing. But
yeah.
Anyway,
yeah. How much?
There is none. All importation. Well, if you're importing it in the sense of you're bringing it, you're posting it in.
Mm-hmm.
All importation of steroids to the UK has been illegal since 2012.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If you're bringing it in on your person, there is no real guidelines. It just says personal use. And you need to be realistic about this and not start saying, well, I've got 20 tubs of D-ball, that's personal use. Fuck off.
I really like D-ball.
They're dumb, but they're not quite that dumb. So you've got to be a little bit sensible. Oh, I'm bulk buying for me and my mates. That's called social supply. That is illegal as well.
Yeah.
So, there isn't really a guideline. The Medicines Act, I think, and I'm spitballing here, but I think it's something like £277 of value that they allow you to bring in medication for personal use. But there is no guideline for anabolics. The other thing is, if you get stopped at border, it's down to the individual border control officer. They're unlikely to have any knowledge. They're more than likely to confiscate the drugs in the first instance, and then you'd have to go through a lengthy process of arguing your case before they agreed or disagreed as to whether it was within the realms of personal use or not. Then you could apply to get it back. It is complex. It can be costly, so it is a little bit difficult. It's not something they're openly looking for. I wouldn't say hundreds, but large numbers of people I've known over the years that have brought anabolics back with no problems whatsoever. But if you were to get stopped, there is going to be an interesting conversation if you've got anything more than 10 vials. And like I say, it's unlikely the officer stopping you is going to know. So generally what they'll do is confiscate everything and then sort the mess out later on down the line.
Lame.
Well, I've even seen seizure cases with the police where the police have taken steroids off someone. So they've done a routine traffic stop, decided to do a car search, found 5 or 6 vials of tests, and they've taken it. And then they've provisionally charged them with intent to supply steroids.
Oh, wow.
It then goes through the process to the Crown Prosecution Service who decide whether there's a case to answer, and it's been decided there is no case to answer. Now, technically, that property should be returned to that individual.
Right.
But I know a couple of police forces that their view is that they can't return the drugs because that would be classed as supply. Now, personally, I think that's absolute bullshit. And I think they're incredibly wrong with that. And I've argued with them and said, you're way out of line. That's personal property. If possession is not illegal, then you giving them back their personal property is not a criminal offence. Yeah. They've argued, oh, no, it falls in lines with supply, which it fucking doesn't. But you'd need a court case to establish some case law.
How about if they just left it on the counter and they turned their back? You know what I mean? And maybe it's not there when they turn around. Some
police forces will say you can have it back, but we need an order from a judge, which means you then have to get a court date to get the judge to go, yeah, you can have your gear back, which you can then take to the police. So it's rare it's returned. It does happen, but it all depends on the individual police force and the officers involved.
All right. We got a bunch of them. How about this one? He says from Koa Monsta. He says, would taking IGF-LR3 before bed be dangerous? I heard it can make you go hypo. If so, when should you take it for max growth? I've always used it around training. I don't know why you would want to take it before bed. There is an insulin-like effect to it, IGF, insulin-like growth factor, and I have seen my blood sugar go down. I do think that there is an insulin-like effect for storage too, meaning that using it pre-workout, you generally do get better pumps.
Yeah, I don't think it's particularly effective, but it would depend on, were you going to bed with a meal on board, were you going to bed in what would be regarded as a semi-fasted state, etc., what your intake's been for the day. Lots of things would play into it.
Yeah.
But it does seem... I'm assuming what they're considering is that if I can raise IGF-1 levels during the night, I'm literally going to grow while I sleep. Yeah. You're not going to push IGF levels up anywhere near high enough to create unsupported growth from it. So that ain't going to happen. So I would stick to it as a feel-good factor for a training.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, and I think there's a lot of variation in IGF-LR3. The first time I had ever used it, it was not nearly as available as it is now. And Dave, I had the most interesting reaction. Within like 3 or 4 days of starting it, all the pores in my face just shrank and disappeared. Like my skin changed. It was weird, man. Like you could not see a single pore in my face. And then it lasted till about like 6 weeks after it was over. I had like this crazy glow, and that was this one run, 1 milligram of IGF, and I never had that experience again with future vials from other companies.
I've got this image in my head now, right, of you doing yellow jar, and your face going and screwing right up like a lemon, yeah. Like a cartoon lemon eating, you know. So good, Dave. I just can't get out of my head now.
All right, we'll see what we can do in post-production with that. How long can you safely run Anavar at 20 milligrams a day with TRT? How long of a break would you need before running it again? Running it for extremely high SHBG. Tried Proviron in the past, but it didn't touch it.
Okay. Probably longer than we think in reality.
Do your labs, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would have said I wouldn't be worried about sort of 10, 12 weeks if you've got a test base, because my main concern around Anavar is low estrogen rather than the liver stressing. But you'd need to keep an eye on your liver and just see how your body's coping with it, and also how it's affecting stomach, if there's any issues around there as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's probably longer than we think, to be fair. The other thing is obviously lipids. You're going to have to keep an eye on lipids as well, because it's going to promote LDL, it's going to lower HDL. Yeah. So as an oral, it's quite a nasty one for lipids, but 10, 20 milligram dosing is not super high either.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he said 20. I wonder if he could get away with even less for SHBG alone. Like, would 10?
If he's only looking at SHBG, he may find that once he's initially dosed, he can bring it down a bit.
Yeah. I wonder, too, has he tried boron? I mean, just looking for something, and I'm not saying don't use Anavar. I'm just saying that if you're looking for a long-term solution that you can do year-round, I wonder if boron would be of benefit.
Or 12. A gram of test.
Yeah, a gram of test. That'll help. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll help.
12 milligrams of boron. That's where I'd start. And I'd be curious, 5 milligrams of Anavar, if that
12?
doesn't work. It usually comes in 6.
Does it? Oh,
yeah. Here it does, at least. That's what the ones I've gotten are around that. So, or 3s. I've seen 3s.
I was going to say 10 or above, but just slightly above, like 10, 15. But yeah, I just wondered why you said 12.
Yeah. I'd try that first. And if you did the Anavar, I'd see what you could do. Like, try it for a month at 10, right? And then get your labs done. See what's happening. Are you getting improvement yet? You know, something like that. And then another month, and then labs, and another month, and watch your HDL just crumble before your eyes before you have to stop.
Yeah, I mean, you are have to be conscious about HDL management. Not that I think you can offset it massively, but it'll help a little bit.
Oh, let's see here.
Yeah, green tea's good.
I'm jealous. I had a coffee right before we started, though, so I'm good. American coffee. Last week,
America's renowned for growing good coffee trees.
Our coffee's not nearly as good as yours. I will give you that. Scott,
we're renowned for growing good coffee trees as well.
How did you get the lump down from your friend's trend? Last week I mentioned I took a shot of somebody else's trend right before the show, left me a big old fat lump on my glute. I didn't. That was the spoiler alert. Once you get that lump, you're not going to be able to completely get it down. Time is the number one thing. I mean, you can use a hot compress, getting a little bit of, like in a glute, you could do some light cardio to help get some blood flow in there. Also, NSAIDs might be beneficial, but I mean, if you take a bad shot on a Wednesday before the show, it's just going to keep swelling right up till Saturday. It's going to be hard to control. And I don't know about taking a bunch of NSAIDs while you're loading everything else into a contest, you know?
So the moral of the story, children, is do not covet thy neighbor's trend.
Yeah, that's the truth, man. Lesson learned. Question for the next show. What are the best health supplements? What health supplements you guys suggest whilst on cycle? Oh, that's that. They misspelled that word. He meant while on cycle.
Oh, no, whilst is a word.
It's pronounced
just because you don't speak.
It's pronounced whilst.
Whilst is pronounced whilst you are on cycle. His English is correct. You're just an American and don't know how to speak proper languages.
You guys, I don't think that's right. You tell us. Comment below. It's pronounced whilst, right?
Shut up. With your ever-growing forehead. Right, I would look at some sort of HDL support. I would look at probably around a gram of liposomal vitamin C as an antioxidant. I would probably look at some sort of fish oil. Personally, I prefer krill due to the improved bioavailability, but you know, it's not the end of the world. Citrus bergamot. And then you start getting into more specifics. You know, are you wanting to support your liver because you may be on an oral or have an oral in the cycle? So you look at something like TUDCA. You could also look at NAC.
Specifics as in like what your body needs personally, you mean? Right?
Yes, but also specifics in relation to what your cycle is.
That's what I'm saying, like for your individual situation.
So, you know, I mean, if you're using orals, you're going to be more leaning towards some liver support. Astragalus, the glutathione, both good for kidney support, depending if we have concerns around there. So a lot of it depends on your compound choices, but I think as a base level, you need to manage blood thickness. You can do that through supplementation, or you can do that through bloodletting. You need to, also cardio to an extent, you need to manage lipid adulteration. You need to manage blood pressure. Now, that might be through a supplement, that might be through cardio, that might be through a medication. And note that one difference between actually specifying a medication rather than a supplementation.
Yeah.
So, and then really beyond that, it's more specific effects for you. Anabolics aren't really going to trigger anything else specifically, but you might find a reduction in Vit D. That's always useful to support when you're on cycle.
Yeah.
Creatine's also always going to be a useful addition when you're on cycle.
How about Strom's product?
Support Max? Yeah,
Support Max.
Support Max is a nice all-rounder. Coenzyme 10 is another nice addition for heart health.
Yeah, Tanya is with us. She mentioned that I'm a fan of ubiquinol, more bioavailable version. And I started that a few years ago. I ran it up to a high dose because it also helps with breathing. I managed to get up to 600 milligrams per day, which is an expensive supplement. So, I mean, it was like $60 a month at that price for good quality ubiquinol. Because I could tell the difference if I got cheap stuff. It didn't give me the same breathing effect.
I think this is funny you mentioned that, because I think this is an issue. I had this conversation with our last couple of days ago. There's lots of supplements that have products in that have shown to improve XYZ.
Yeah.
But there's lots of supplements with products in that have proven to XYZ, but aren't at an effective dose. And when you start looking at effective dosing of these supplements, it can get very expensive very quickly.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's very easy to get lost in the world of supplements and end up with a shopping list of products and an extremely high bill every month that may not be giving you the benefits you think it is, just simply because you don't need it.
100% agree, man. I can't count how many times somebody's come to work with me and they are literally on a list of 15 supplements just because, you know, they're like, we've got milk thistle, NAC, glutathione. It's like, whoa, all those things. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, liver support, right? I'm all for that, but
if you don't need it.
Yeah, if you don't need it at this time, is it absolutely necessary to be spending that additional $100 a month on, you know, 3 or 4 different products?
That's another couple of vials of test, for God's sake. I mean, come on.
Yeah, could be running $1,000 more. Hey, speaking of which, so last week we had that question, and this is an example of somebody who didn't know milligrams or milliliters. Patreon guy asked us 20 milligrams of Anavar a day with 2 grams of test. So he got back to me and he was like, oh, I meant, and so he still got it wrong. Bless his heart. He said, I meant 2 milligrams, meaning 1 milligram twice a week, so that I get 2
mil.
Yeah. He meant 2 milliliters. So he was going to take 400 tests, which I feel a lot more confident with now.
That was it's like yeah. I think the analogy I used at the time was that's like having the Big Mac meal, isn't it, with the Diet Coke situation. That makes a lot more sense.
All right. Hi guys, love the show and been watching for a long time. Lots of interesting info. I have a question for the next show, hopefully. How does exogenous how much does exogenous HGH shut down natural production? And when you stop, are there any negatives or natural production afterwards, in your opinion?
I'm not aware of any long-term suppressive factors. Yeah, I mean, the regulatory system is as simple as this. HGH goes up, your body stops producing it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
But it does seem to be quite instantaneous. As soon as the HGH drops, your body starts to kick it back in. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people adopted an every other day protocol or a break protocol in HGH use so that you force your natural system to do something. There was a time when people were doing HGH one day and then secretaries the next day, or secretagogues, however you want.
There you go, you did it.
Fucking whatever you want to say it. GH stimulating products that are going to increase your natural production for the second day and then back to the GH for the third day.
Yeah.
So, there's been all sorts of protocols developed over the years around the fact that it is suppressive, but I have no knowledge of anyone permanently stopping natural GH production from the use of GH at all.
Yes.
The thyroid is another thing that's quite robust, but I have seen some very rare cases of people having permanent thyroid suppression. But I would suspect that that's due to an underlying sensitivity issue, genetic problem, rather than the actual use of thyroid meds themselves.
Yeah. All right. I've got one here that I wanted to make sure we got on. We missed it last week. He said, Scott, the following comment on the last episode got 17 likes. That's how popular it was. And I thought I would bring it up again, like promised. Okay. He says, hi, Scott. On a recent episode with Dave, you guys said 1 milligram of Arimidex purchased over the counter, I don't know what he means by that, daily is too much for 600 milligrams of test and 1,000 IU of HCG. If someone aromatizes that much on a kind of moderate dose, does it mean that they can build muscle more efficiently? Needless to say, test to get to optimize estradiol. My point is whether someone who aromatizes so crazy can get away with 400 milligrams of test while others need 1,000 milligrams of test to have the same aromatizing effects. Your biggest fan on YouTube. Thanks for sharing your knowledge.
I'm a little bit confused. I may be assuming incorrectly here. We know that estrogen plays a role in growth and health and support and everything else. We know it needs to be managed, not obliterated, but we know obviously as it goes high, it starts to create negative impacts. If someone's a high aromatizer, they have to then work harder to control that estrogen, be that through drug selection, i.e. picking less aromatizing compounds and going more down DHT routes, or compounds that aromatize at a lesser rate, like say something like Deca, or they run higher levels of AIs. A higher level of AIs are obviously going to have some negative impacts, and it's a trade-off between that and the negative impacts of higher estrogen. If he's asking if someone who's a high aromatizer going to grow better on lower doses because they are a high aromatizer, not necessarily.
No.
I would say if someone has a high tolerance of elevated estrogen, they're probably going to be prone to better progress.
Yeah.
Not just the fact, because basically if you're a fat fuck like me, you produce very high levels of estrogen. That isn't necessarily going to promote my growth. Now, the caveat to that is, for me, I have a very high toleration of estrogen. So I do believe that has been instrumental in me being able to get as big as I got. But the fact that I aromatize, not so much. The fact that I tolerate, yes. And I've got loads of clients that have estrogen problems just on TRT because they carry high levels of body fat, and as a result, they convert at a high rate. So I don't think a high conversion is beneficial to growth, but I do think a high tolerance is beneficial to growth.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that the high conversion has anything to do with, in a positive way, with, in fact, you know what, Dave, I would say for a guy like that, because if you remember, it was a few weeks ago, we had a guy who said 600 tests and I'm taking 1 milligram of Arimidex every day, to control it. I think that he might be in a much better position to use a compound like the famous test in Primo together. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because that's just a lot of AI to be pounding. I would think even a lower test with another compound that isn't going to aromatize could be a good move.
Or even not aromatize at that rate. I mean, EQ might be good for him. Yeah. Deca potentially good for him because we've got a 20% conversion.
Yeah.
And then obviously you go into your DHTs as well. So there's definitely a big scope there. But yeah, I think there comes a point where it's like, come on now, this just isn't working. Try a different route. You're creating more work than there needs to be when there are alternatives. And that's the thing. It's picking the right tool to suit your circumstances and your individuality. And there's a list of drugs that we might look at and go, well, they're optimal for what I want to achieve, but they're going to get knocked off depending on your own personal tolerances. And it might be that you end up going for a less optimal route on paper, but it's more optimal for you because of your unique responses to the drugs.
Very well said.
Someone aromatizing at that level is quite unique. It's not an everyday occurrence.
Yeah. Why, hello! I wanted to do something different with my True Nutrition advertisement for today. And here's the thing, I just got our order in. Victoria and I, we pay for all the protein that we get. They don't send us anything for free. And that's because I've believed in True Nutrition for 15 years now. I've been using them ever since I contest prep. They have some of the cleanest, best quality protein. A lot of times I use the Team Skip, but here's the deal. I'm going back to the Pure Whey Isolate. The Pure Whey Isolate, it just processes so fast. This is my favorite flavor, chocolate peanut butter cup. But if you want to try just like 1 pound at a time, you can do that. Just sample it. I've never had the cookie butter, so I'm going to try the cookie butter this week. We got a big old bag of pea protein isolate. For the wife, this is what she likes to use. And here's the thing, they're just about wholesale prices at True Nutrition, plus they don't add the flavor in when they weigh it. So you get like legit 1 pound of protein, and then from there they add the flavor after that. So every 1 pound, I think it's like 1.2, I'm not sure, don't quote me on that. But hey, here's the thing, True Nutrition is a great quality protein. They believe in us, they advertise with us because I literally asked them to. And if you use our code THINK, you'll get some additional savings. Plus, of course, that's like voting for our podcast. So thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed my my impromptu ad. Goodbye. All right. Since testosterone promotes health, healing, and recovery, would it be logical that a higher level of testosterone reduces recovery time and wound healing time? If this is so, then a person on TRT at 150 milligrams should see significant healing, muscle repair, and recovery time at 300 milligrams as compared to the level he would have gotten at 150. So a total level of 2,000 test level should be better for recovery than a level of 900. Is this significant enough to warrant a short blast after an injury or surgery? What are your thoughts? We've talked about this before, overall.
First of all, it's not linear in the same way that growth from drug dosing is not linear. There's even been research showing that there is an upper limit where drug dosing starts to tap out. So that's definitely not the case. So if you go from 250 to 500 milligrams, you're not going to get the same increase in progress going from 500 to 1,000 or 1,000 to 2,000. As you start to jump significantly higher increases, you're not getting significantly higher growth. So that's one. As you increase dose, you increase stress factors. So that's 2. And 3, it also depends on the injury you're looking to recover from. So certain soft tissue, there may be some benefit, but it's not going to be that dramatically increased. There is a point where a drug dosing is a medication, and then there is a point where it becomes counterproductive, and that is a linear scale of dose. The old saying of the difference between a medication and a poison is dose is very, very true, and it falls into this very definitely. Having a good, healthy test level, or maybe slightly above healthy test level, is going to promote recovery and growth. Yes, from injury to a point, but the mechanisms aren't quite the same. You're not re-tearing muscle tissue in quite the same way. But going beyond that is not going to add anything to recovery, though there are certain compounds, Anavar being one of them, that are going to add a significant amount to recovery, but are going to present a lot of secondary health risks.
Yeah, Anavar, Nandrolone, Equipoise, those would be the 3 I would look at for increased collagen synthesis. Now, if he had an issue with bone, I would look at growth hormone. Growth hormone is amazing at regrowing bone. What's that?
And Deca.
Deca's good for bones?
No, it's treatment for osteoporosis, wasn't it?
Okay. Yeah, a lot of gear has been, hasn't it? I don't think they called it gear in that scenario, though. Doctors weren't like, here, lady, I've got some gear for you to take to fix your osteoporosis.
It definitely isn't double the dose, double the effect in any way, shape, or form. And that's across the board with anabolics. And there becomes a point when therapeutic dosings become counterproductive because they're not adding that much to the benefit, but they're increasing significantly the negatives.
Paul Burnett of Anabolic Bodybuilding was just on one of the shows recently talking about his shoulder recovery. Now, I'd always heard that the one thing you do want to watch out for with like trying to speed up your recovery is that with increased collagen production comes increased scarring. And what his doctor suggested was to wait 2 weeks after his shoulder surgery before he actually started implementing, additional recovery super Supps, which makes sense to me because I'd always heard that was a concern was, a thickening of scars.
Yeah, I mean, if you were looking at improved recovery, I'd probably look at slightly above a TRT dose. If you were adding a secondary compound, I'd only be looking at 100, maybe 2. There's been some real interesting progress with doses of Deca at as low as 50 milligrams.
Yeah.
For injury recovery. Then you've got things like growth, TB, BPC, all depending on the type of the injury as to how they're going to help. I mean, soft tissue GH is miraculous for.
All right, we got another one related. This was in the live stream. Hey guys, love the show. I have BPC-157 coming from Amino. We'll just say that. And thanks if you used our code. To use on an elbow injury, is it best to inject close to the injury? And if so, what dosage is recommended? He can go just anywhere I'd put it in my shoulder. I wouldn't try to mess around with getting that in the elbow. You know what I mean? It's going to go systemic once you've taken it.
So with BPC, the half-life is incredibly short.
Yeah.
One of the issues, I wouldn't say an issue, I prefer sighting or as close to sight as practical, for the simple reason that the longer it's in the body and it takes time to get into the bloodstream and then get to the site, the more it will have decayed. So I prefer to go as close to site as possible, therefore getting the maximum concentration. But if you injected it in your arse, is it not going to work? No, it will still work. It's just not going to get the same level of concentration at the site of the injury. That's it. That's the only reason. Personally, I go around 300 micrograms twice a day. Some people will argue 500. You can take more, but I think 300 is sort of the minimum end of the dosing you want to be at. If you want to take more, it's budget really orientated then. But yeah, I mean, I'd do twice a day shot as close to the site as possible, but it's only because of that half-life and getting it into the system and getting it to the site reason, no other reason.
Yeah, I go 500 twice a day, maybe even a little bit higher at first, to get that inflammation down quickly, and then I'll back it off. When I've used it, and I found that it is more beneficial for, I would say, like smaller areas, like an elbow or a shoulder, versus like your SI goes out. I feel like it's not as effective with like, like larger injuries.
I don't think it works well with large inflammation because it eats more tendon, ligament integrity and reduce inflammation in those areas. They are relatively small injury points.
Yeah.
Where I think when you've got a big, large, massive inflammation, it's not the compound to go for personally.
Yeah, I found very little difference when I'd had like low back problems, and I'd try taking it. It's hard to say, I'm sure it did something, but it didn't have that almost instantaneous inflammation effects that I saw with like, a painful elbow, which I would feel relief within hours after using it. Hey, that said, and I do have a video I need to get out with Dr. Marv about tennis elbow. You can take BPC all day long, and if you don't change the thing that caused it, you know what I mean? And it's generally a repetitive use issue, you're going to keep having that same issue. So
yep. That is one of the things. You need to address the offending behavior if it is an offending behavior problem.
All right. We'll try to rip through the last couple here. Oh, David Vader Crosland. Dave, I got to tell you something, man. Listen, so you can't win, all right? You've sat far away from the mic sometimes, and you're way back here, and I can't hear you. And then I said, so Dave, get close to your mic. And then last episode, you sounded like this. So we had a few comments. People were like, why is that dude breathing so heavy? So I'm sorry, Dave. I'll take the blame on this one.
So I'm breathing heavy because I'm a fat fuck.
Sorry, Dave. All right, one more. Quick question. I found the best combination is GH, insulin, T3, and test. It's a good combo. Not going to lie. I agree with you. I work a lot, so it's tough to monitor quick-acting insulin and get proper macros in post-workout. In the past, I have, and I got crazy muscle gains. So now I'm running 5 IU GH, 25 to 50 T3, 1,000 test, and 10 to 15 IU of Lantus. I used to hear the horror stories of becoming diabetic, but never saw it myself. Have you guys ever heard of anyone having an issue with this?
What, with insulin resistance from insulin use?
You got to bring it in a little bit. Your weight. Not that bit. Not that close, Dave. Middle ground. Middle ground, okay? Middle ground, Dave. Yeah. Issues with using insulin. Is insulin going to make you a diabetic? I guess is the question.
I can't say I've never seen someone go create type 2 diabetes with insulin use. I have, but it was very abusive use. I have seen plenty of people cause short-term insulin resistance when they've gone like super high dosing. And I've seen lots of people when they've done the sort of Milos protocols, 80, 120 IU a day off season. When it comes to dieting, it's been incredibly difficult for them to get lean.
Yeah.
Because they have built such resistance. Are those people going to develop type 2 later on in life because of issues they've created now? I don't know. Possibly. We'll see when that time comes. But I haven't seen anyone have issues around true type 2 diabetes from just sort of half sensible insulin use. No.
I'd be more concerned about creating an issue with high dose growth over a long haul. Like if we're using,
I think this definitely is
IU pharma long term, the next 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, my HbA1c is not great. Is that due to the high growth and high insulin use, or is that just due to the fact that I've rammed so much food down my throat over the years, and I continue to carry very high levels of body fat? I think it's probably the latter.
Yeah.
If we're honest,
What about this last question here in the stream? Can a 54-year-old woman boost her testosterone naturally with diet and supplements?
To an extent, it would depend, one, on how far off healthy your current diet is. Supplement-wise, I would definitely be considering DHEA, 25 milligrams to 50 milligrams a day. I've seen that be very, very effective with 50-plus females looking to increase their test levels because it's sort of menopausally low. Boron can sometimes help as well, but DHEA definitely has a good impact on females wanting to increase their test naturally.
Yeah, I think that if you're getting into, and it depends on the individual too, right? You know, in what was your history? Have you used pharmaceutical birth control for the last, for 25 years, for half of your life? There's girls who are putting birth control from the time they were 13, they run that up until they're 40. And, then that's kind of like, hey, let's put you on testosterone replacement at 15. That's going to have an impact on your hormones down the road. It might be hard for you to recover to that. And, worst case scenario, maybe there is some medical need there to, have first maybe start with estrogen, progesterone, and then testosterone if needed,
Yeah, I mean, with testosterone in a female, so 25% is made by the adrenal gland. 50% comes from tissue conversion, so that's where estrogen or other hormones go into tissue and is converted to testosterone, and 25% is done in the ovaries. Obviously, why the DHEA works is because it's a precursor to adrenal-produced testosterone. And your adrenal gland is actually capable of producing sort of 3, 4, 5 nmol of test, where a female's upper limit is 1.6. So, you can generally adequately produce enough test through the adrenal function in a female if you stimulate it with DHA. But it doesn't always work. But it is definitely an option if you got to the point where I'm not recovering through diet and regular supplementation, and I don't want to commit to a gel or something of that nature, which is the common route that they'll put females on for testosterone.
Yeah.
Obviously, there is a big trend within our industry for fem test, but that's not something that's available for the average user through, a prescription route.
Yeah. All right, Dave. Do you have any shout-outs?
I do. Right. So, hang on, because I need to read.
Hollywood Dave is with us.
Hollywood Dave is with us, yes. Oh, God. Right. So, allspeedcustoms.com.
Okay. Who's this?
A guy called Brian Moat owns it. So, some of you may be aware of my engine build.
I'm going to go to the site, too. I'm going to check this out.
And my desire for a Pro Charger. So, Brian Moat and the team at All Speed have been helping me, one, with choices, as in what's going to be suitable for my build, and what's going to be suitable to future-proof my build, and also with acquiring said parts when the time is right. But obviously, I can't acquire said parts because you tight gits haven't put enough money in the pot.
Ooh, look at that one, Dave.
Oh, don't like the headlights on that.
I like that car. That's cool.
I like the rest of it. I just don't like the headlights.
Those headlights were like new. They were new. They were like.
I know, but they just look ugly. The Barracuda's nice.
Which one's the Barracuda?
The silver one next to where you were.
Oh, I see it.
That one. That's nice.
Ooh, that's wild. Look, it's got the same kind of headlights in it.
Yeah, but they suit that. They don't suit the other one.
What's this one? You ever seen a Roadrunner before?
A friend of mine has a 69 Hemi RT Roadrunner.
Dude, this
numbers.
thing is
worth
crazy
a fortune.
looking. This thing is crazy looking, Dave. They have big engines in them too, don't they? Like a 454 or something?
Yeah, can do. Come with all sorts.
Wow, look at they got the door panels. Look at that.
Yeah, I say they do really good work. I had a quick flick through and I was very impressed.
I like it.
Very impressed. And they've been really helpful from a point of view of helping me decide. So massive shout out to them.
What are you going to do?
So I'm going to say the wrong coding, but I'm going to go with the D1X Pro Charger, which is slightly above the previous one.
Oh.
Run a slightly smaller, larger pulley, should I say, to start with, to offset the fact that it's a more powerful Pro Charger, because I don't want to be running huge amounts of boost. It's going to be the Stage 2 intercooler, dump valve, balancer, and then at a later date I will upgrade the transmission. I think I can get away. I might have to. I've got a 44-44 transfer case. I think I'm going to have to go to a 44-45, because I'm not doing hard launches in 4-wheel drive or anything like that. I generally drive in 2-wheel drive. I'll only use 4-wheel drive to genuinely get through bad weather.
Yeah.
I should be able to run a fairly stock front end, but I will need to beef the back end up.
Okay. Huh. Well, it'll be a fun project. When do you project like all this stuff to be done, like having the Pro Charger installed and all that?
Engine should be back in by Friday of this week. Exhaust and tune should be done by the end of next week. Pro Charger should be in by the end of the year with a new fuel system.
Okay.
And then I'm probably going to be another 12 months before I do anything more.
But you'll be able to like drive it around before that, right?
Yeah. I'll be driving it in between. But
okay.
Yeah, and then it's just a case of saving up, so I can afford the next bit, and saving up so I can afford the next bit.
It's cool. It's fun to have projects, It
is. It's nice to be able to plan. Yes, sorry, Sam, you are right. 440 is the low power motor. It's nice to be able to plan ahead, so I don't do something stupid now that then makes it hard work later down the line.
All right, yeah, that makes sense.
I'm prone to that.
You got any wisdom, Uncle Dave's wisdom for us today?
Yeah, just keep swimming.
Something about green tea. Something
about green tea. I like green tea. Green tea is very nice.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for you too. Healthier than coffee too. I bet. If you're drinking a lot of it.
How dare you? Diss coffee.
Keep your caffeine down a little bit. Get some EGCG, some antioxidants from that green tea.
I'm going to admit, I'm more stuck on the fact that you've been disrespectful to caffeine
and
coffee.
I like caffeine. Believe me, I like coffee too. I drank some coffee today. It's good. I'm all for coffee. But if you're going to drink a big pot of it all day long and you have blood pressure, Dave, you might be better off.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Green tea.
Don't know what you're talking about.
You might be better off.
You're boring.
Did you see that cartoon or that animated clip I had
of
us?
I didn't watch it all. I saw a little bit of it. Why does my tash keep coming and going?
You had your hand on your face like this.
Why do I have no beard?
I don't know. Why do I have an orange round nose? I don't know. But they got my shirt right. I was wearing Alex's sweatshirt from the gym, AW. They nailed that. Did you notice on your arm there was a blood drop tattoo? It looked just like the eval blood drop.
No, I didn't.
It's good. It just showed one tattoo, and it was like a big blood drop on your arm. Like,
AI is mental. Marketing company sent me a video, and this has just been done off a still picture.
Okay.
And it's created a real life looking video of these people dancing.
So
it's taking a photograph of somebody.
Deep fakes.
It's mad. The second one looks a little bit ropey. The proportions aren't quite, but the others, I wouldn't have a clue that was just a still photograph that's been created.
Dude, and to think this is just the beginning. You know what I mean? Like, where's that technology going to be a decade from now? You're not going to be able to believe anything you see. They're going to put up, here's this famous celebrity doing this illicit act. You know what I mean? Like they're going to do all sorts of stuff like that, and you're not going to be able to tell what's real and what's not.
Well, in lieu of any Dave advice, I was talking to Martin Ford about this.
Okay.
So there's been a bit of a hoo-ha in Hollywood because actors are really concerned because when they do a lot of films now, they do a lot of blue screen work and they do a lot of digital mapping.
Right.
But that means that the film companies have digital records of the actors, both on how they look and how they move and their voices, and they can actually recreate them.
Yeah.
which means they don't need the actor.
Yeah, Martin, we don't need you for this one, but you're going to be in it.
Yeah, so the big argument has been how actors remain in control of their image and get royalties if the digitized version of them is used at a future date.
Yeah.
And that's been apparently quite a big argument.
Hey, I can't blame you, man. Imagine if you saw like a feature-length movie with your face. It's you doing it, but you never did it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Because they can just make you do whatever they want. It's incredible how... It's scary as well, because like you say, you just can't trust your eyes anymore.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know what you're looking at, is whether it's real or it's computer generated.
Yeah, that's wild, man. It is. The times we're living in. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in. And if you got this far and you haven't hit the like button, then do us that favor. It doesn't cost you anything. Please hit the like button because it really does help our programming. Helps us to get out. More people will see us if you leave us a like. And if you leave us a comment, that helps immensely. Tell us what you think about the show this week. And, of course, go to evalbloodanalysis.com to get your labs done by Dave. Of course, check out truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there, supplementsource.ca for Canadians. Go to stromsports.com to go to Strom Sports Nutrition. Get some good health supplements over there if you're in the UK. And Patreon, thank you guys over there. Dave, do you have any pillars of strength or anything coming up?
I've got a PED course pending, but to be quite honest, I just don't have enough people for it, so there's no point starting it. So I'm just trying to get some more numbers for the PEDS course. Right. Other than that, yeah, and just usual shit, app, Better You, and the usual stuff. Nice.
Yeah, guys, sign up for the PEDS course. Get in with Dave. Get to hang out with him, do some stuff, learn some stuff about gear.